y'all. I'm Erin Small, and I'm excited to welcome you to the very first episode of the Flower Hour. I'm Erin, your local agriculture extension agent, flower farmer, and now your podcast host. I'm so excited to kick things off and share conversations all about gardening, cut flowers, and incredible ways that plants and flowers connect us. So to start things off, I'm joined by somebody who's not only a fellow flower farmer, but she's also a Heart of Virginia Master Gardener volunteer, and she works alongside of me with Virginia Cooperative Extension. You'll hear her throughout today's episode guiding our conversation, asking questions that I know many of you are probably already wondering about who I am, what this podcast is all about. So, Leanna McCreary, I'm so glad that you are here to help us kick off this first episode.
Thank you for having me, Erin. I'm so excited to be here.
So, before we dive into everything Extension and Flower Hour, I want to start off my podcast by the people I'm with sharing their first flower memory. So, what is that memory for you?
Yeah, my first memory, it goes way back to the second grade. It was an after-school program where we filled red Solo cups with dirt, got our hands dirty, got to plant seeds and water it and watch it grow. And it was just so inspiring to me as a young kid to be able to see something come to fruition. And so I knew when I became a mom that I wanted to share that love of gardening and excitement with my son.
I love that. And your son has popped into our office some before. I know he's got a little presence on your social media he's always helping mom out, it seems like, in the garden. How old is he?
He's 6 years old, and he really does. He helps me with everything from transplanting to harvesting to even making bouquets.
Yes, he's your little shadow. And your business is called Handpicked Blossoms, correct?
That's right.
I love that. So tell me a little bit about how you got started in that business. I know that you have a relatively small-ish property in comparison to the land around Prince Edward. So what are you doing differently on your farm to really maximize your production?
Yeah, so I live on just under 6 acres, but I farm on less than an acre. And I try to focus on regenerative farming practices. So that's soil health, biodiversity, and probably the most important thing you can do for your farm is to get a soil test done, which can be done through extension.
Yes.
And as for biodiversity, I focus on growing perennial cut flowers, native plants, and pollinator-friendly flowers. And ever since becoming a master gardener, I've learned so much about invasive species of plants and animals and how to grow habitats to support the local ecosystem. There are certain crops that I don't grow because of deer pressure and pest pressure. Some of those are like tulips and ranunculus. I know those could be really popular in springtime, but it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, tulips are hard too. I've heard from several growers. We're coming up on the end of March. Tulips should be, our top seller this time of day, but a lot of growers I know struggled with growing tulips this year. I tried to grow them last year, and I struggled myself. So I feel like with tulips, you've either got it or you don't. I don't know. That's just what I found. So, Leanna, I know now you've got some questions for me so you can get to know who I am and what this whole podcast is all about.
Yeah. As a Heart of Virginia Master Gardener, I get to volunteer with Erin in her role as an extension agent. So, Erin, we know each other from Prince Edward County Extension Office, but we also share something else in common. We're both flower farmers.
Yes.
You grow in Aspen, Virginia. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up wearing both hats, extension agent and flower farmer.
Well, I guess it starts early on. In high school, I was our greenhouse manager with FFA. So I learned the seeding, the plant maintenance. I learned that production kind of part of seed development. And I kind of grew in my love of plants. In my senior year of high school, I actually interned with our county agriculture extension agent who still works for Extension, which is pretty cool. He's still a mentor to me in some ways. So that kind of bit my bug for growing things and working with Extension. I always was involved in 4-H growing up, whether it was with livestock or teen activities or camps, going to the county fairs. So I've always been involved in ag and in gardening in some way. When I was younger, we would grow sunflowers, but like you, we had a lot of deer pressure where I lived. We were surrounded by woods, so we didn't really grow too many flowers when I was little, but I've always loved them. So that's kind of how I started with that. And I actually was a teacher for 3 years. So that's what my degree was in at Virginia Tech. And so I got to teach in the classroom, experience a little of that. And then now I'm in extension, and I feel like it's been a great way for me to connect my love of teaching with my love of agriculture and love of community connections. And I feel like in my job now, I get to do all of those things.
That's so cool. I love how you have it all connected together. I actually first got into flowers after experiencing postpartum depression. It was really hard for me, but, gardening, it got me outdoors. It gave my mind something to focus on. And then, like, the joy of, like, sharing flowers is just so infectious.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Was flower farming something you always wanted to do, or did it grow out of your work in ag?
I think a little bit of both. So I'm actually a floral designer as well, and that is really what sparked my interest in cut flowers, because I was starting to use some flowers that I grew in my wedding work, and I also was connecting with local farmers in the community to supply me with flowers for my wedding work. So it grew out of that. But, I've always loved nature. I've always loved working outside, getting my hands dirty and gardening. And like you said, seeing a seed come to fruition, seeing something go from the field to your kitchen table is really satisfying. And it's just a naturally rewarding thing to do. So I think that it's kind of always been part of what I wanted, even if I didn't know it.
So what does your flower farm look like today?
Well, today my flower farm is actually on old tobacco land, and the land that it's on, the nanny that's there, she has always wanted sunflowers in her back field, and she has been married for, 70 years now.
Oh, wow.
So married a long time, and it took me to get flowers on her tobacco land. So we always laugh about that, but it's actually really great fertile ground. We put chicken litter down, and this week we're actually tillering it up because it's finally had enough of a stretch of dryness where we can actually till the ground. And I looked, and knock on wood, I guess this table is probably fake wood, but if we knocked on it, hopefully we won't get any more hard freezes. Maybe just some frost. So I'm really hoping to get some of my lisianthus, snapdragons, some of my cooler spring crops in the ground here in the next week or two.
When I think of a flower farm, I think of rows upon rows of blooming flowers, but that's not what mine looks like. Not everything is blooming at the same time. There are rows that desperately need to be weeded, and many of my perennials are only in their first or second year, so they're not really showing yet. Do you have perennials, or do you just grow annuals?
Yeah, so this is actually kind of like you. I'm getting my feet wet with this. So I've only really been trying to do the thing a year. So I'm learning alongside of all my growers, which I really love. And so because of that, I don't have many perennials myself. I do have some things that overwintered okay, but I'm also going to change my garden layout this year and do a little bit more of like a row planting than the cottage style vibe I had going last year, just so it's more manageable with weeds, with watering. I'm going to put down drip tape, which last year, for all of you growers that want to do drip tape, I would highly recommend it, because when I tried to do above ground watering last year, it just does not work well. It leads to a lot of disease pressure and wilting and rot. And, your goal of a productive cut flower farm, I think, is to not have flowers in the field. You want them sold. You don't want them hanging out in your field, because that's money on the ground that you aren't making. So I think that anything you're doing watering that'll damage the bloom, you want to avoid that. So I just learned a lot last year, and I'm hoping that this year will be more successful.
Yeah.
Based off what I've learned, same as you.
Right. Yeah, I tried overhead watering as well, and I learned that the water pressure going uphill is lessened, and so it doesn't work properly to even water everything when you don't have the the drip tape. Let's transition to talking about Extension. For listeners who might not know, Extension is a partnership between Virginia Cooperative, Virginia Tech, and Virginia State University, and it was established in 1914. The mission is to work in communities to share knowledge, support businesses, and apply research that advances the well-beings of Virginians. From my understanding, Extension acts as a bridge between agricultural research and what actually happens in our gardens, farms, and communities. Erin, can you describe what you do as an Extension agent?
Sure. Well, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with that. So I believe we are the taxpayer's best kept secret. As Extension agents, we do work for you. We are a free service, and we're here to support farmers in our communities. Extension's actually broken into basically 3 hats. Not every office has all 3 hats, but we can connect you to them. So we have our 4-H agents who work with youth development, and a lot of times that's through different summer camps and clubs, and they'll have events at county fairs, and there's a lot that our 4-H agents do. And then we've got FCS agents, which are family consumer science agents, and they're more of teaching life skills. They do nutrition, diabetes training, meal planning. They've got a wide variety of things related to nutrition and family health. And then we've also got our ag agents. So ag and natural resources agents work in specialized areas, but we also, here in Farmville, I'm a general county agent, so I could be doing everything from row crops to tree identification to pest management. I could be helping with horticulture questions. I could be making field visits with our local veterinarian and, taking notes for him as he's palpating. So we really do a lot. We support forage testing and animal nutrition. We do hay analysis, soil sampling, disease testing for people. If you have a rose bush growing and you notice that it's got an insect on it, well, I could come out there and tell you what kind of insect it is and help you figure out how to control it better. Or if you have a pear tree and you have no idea how to prune it, your local extension agent could come out and they could teach you how to prune your tree. So we do a whole lot of stuff, but yeah, our ag agents are really a connector between our land grant universities, between the research that's going on there, and we're bringing that to farmers through field visits, through programs, and then some of us do our own research as well, just to connect to each other and connect to our communities.
So what kind of programs or services do you offer locally?
So locally here in Prince Edward County, I've developed the Cut Flower Discussion Group. That's kind of a big program impact area that I've been working on now for, this will be the 3rd year that it's actually been happening. So the Cut Flower Discussion Group is a group of flower farmers in Virginia, and it's actually the only commodity group of its kind for flower growers in the state. And it alternates between kind of a more formal setting, whether that's in a college or a classroom or an extension office, and then the alternative month we'll be out in the field and we'll be doing some hands-on learning on the farm with fellow flower growers, so that y'all can see each other's different practices. And that's something that I love about the network is so many growers have connected with each other that you might see each other at a farmer's market, but beyond that, you don't really know who each other are, So this network has been a great way for people to connect, and a couple of collectives have come out of it in different areas of Central Virginia where y'all are marketing together. And so that's something that I've been supporting. I also do a Dairy Day program, which is not flower related, but June 6th, that's going to be here in Farmville, Virginia at the 5 County Fairgrounds. It's my little plug-in for that. But I do Dairy Day programs. I do livestock programs, crops expos. We really have a lot of different kinds of programs going on at our extension office. We're very active here in Farmville.
As a flower farmer, I know I get a lot of help from Extension, but who usually reaches out to Extension for help?
Prince Edward County is interesting because it's a 2-college town with Farmville, so we get a very different kind of clientele and client question base, I would say, in town than we do in our very rural Prince Edward County. So here we have a wide variety of people that utilize our extension resources. I could be working with ag in the classroom in the elementary school, reading a story about rabbits to second graders, or the next day I could be out on a farm with a 30-year-old that just inherited their family's farm and they're looking for advice on where to start. I could be out on the farm with an 80-year-old that's trying to get up cows and needs advice on, how to manage them better. So we really work with everybody.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit more about the podcast itself. What was the inspiration behind starting the Flower Hour podcast?
Yeah, so inspiration from the podcast actually came from one of my growers and flower mentors in Charlotte County. She and I were riding around her farm on her mule, and she was just telling me the best stories, and she's hilarious, and I'm really going to try to twist her arm to get on one of these episodes, which she's already agreed she will, so
yes.
Stay tuned. Archland Farms in Charlotte County is where she is, and I just wanted to copy and paste everything she was telling me, and I'm like, I wish this person could hear what you're telling me because they had this problem, and I want everybody, all my growers, to get to hear all the great information I learned from you all the time. So I thought that this podcast would be a good connector point. And also, I know myself, when I'm riding in the car, I like to listen to a podcast on my way to work, and when I'm weeding in the field, I like to listen to podcasts. I know a lot of y'all have mentioned that too. So I said, why not make it educational? Why not make it our Virginia farmers? And I'm really hoping that I'm able to connect specialists to growers through the podcast and growers to each other, and maybe even, people from other land grant institutions that are near Virginia to share what they're doing in the flower world that maybe we can glean a little bit from them.
I love that inspiration. Who do you hope will listen to this?
I really hope that anybody that's interested in flowers and horticulture and learning more about extension, maybe they're just bored and they want a new podcast to listen to and they'll plug into mine. I'm hoping that we'll reach a great broad audience here in Virginia.
What do flower growers, gardeners, or even curious beginners have to gain from listening?
Well, like I mentioned, I think the connection, I think to fellow growers, I think to our extension services that maybe you haven't heard of before, specialists at Virginia Tech or Virginia State that maybe you haven't worked with, and this could be a way for you to reach them. Maybe you live on the Eastern Shore and you're 4 hours away from our programs here in Farmville. This could be a great way for you to connect to what we're doing still.
Since we're both flower farmers, let's talk a little bit about cut flowers. For someone interested in growing for bouquets or small-scale sales, what makes a cut flower a good flower?
I think what makes a cut flower a good flower is consistency, that you don't overpromise something to a customer, whether that's stem length, whether it's the shape of the flower structure. If you're not growing snapdragons with netting, they're going to get a little wonky on you. So making sure that you've got a consistent product. If you are working with a florist and they are expecting a 20 to 26 inch long snapdragon stem, that's what you're actually giving them. I think vase longevity and harvesting your bloom at the right time is also something that contributes to a flower being a good cut flower. Vase life, as you know, there's different things, different additives we can do in the water, different processing methods that can contribute to a flower lasting longer. Because as soon as you're cutting that flower off the mother stem, they're wanting to die.
Yes.
That's their first.
Time is
they're
of the
in stress
essence.
mode. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing is finding a way for your flowers to live as long as you can let them live, so that you have more time to market them if you don't have a market already.
Because different varieties have different vase life, and then there's also the bloom period time of the flower. So is it just blooming in June, or is it blooming throughout the summer and the fall?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think that's where succession planning comes into play as well. So, don't seed all of your sunflowers at the same time, because it's going to be hard for you as a beginning flower farmer to maybe market 500 stems within a 2-week period. It's going to be much more manageable for you to market 100 and then do that for like 6 weeks instead of 2. So thinking about that, I think, helps as well.
I think that's really great advice. What are some of your favorite cut flowers to grow?
My favorites to grow, I'm part of the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers, and I've gotten to participate in their seed trials and learn about some really cool varieties. And one variety that I grew last year, as my first year really going at it, was Lysianthus, which, as you know, it's a 7-month crop. It's a challenge to grow. The seeds are tiny, tiny. They're smaller than tobacco seeds. And you start that in January when you feel like you have nothing else to do because the sun goes down at 5 o'clock. I'm in the greenhouse starting Lysianthus. So that's something I really loved because it was a challenge. It's got a beautiful rose-looking crop that doesn't have thorns, and it comes in a lot of different colors. So that's something that I love to grow. I also love zinnias. I grew some really interesting, they were cactus agave zinnias, and they were as big as my hand. So I didn't have the investment to make in a bunch of, showstopper dahlias or a bunch of peonies, and I didn't have them. So I said, I'm going to invest in zinnias that can give me that same mass flower effect in a design, and they really were great. So I love to grow zinnia varieties as well. I grew those, they're called like billy balls.
Oh, yes, Cresspedia.
Yes, you got that Latin word, the Cresspedia. I grew those last year, and I love them because they dry. So
They dry really well.
Yes, and I grew some limonium and status, and so
those are also good dried.
Amaranthus, celosia. I grow a lot of those varieties, things that I know I can dry to continue that shelf life since I don't have a refrigerator either. So moving forward, like, what advice would I have for somebody who wants to start growing flowers locally? I would say find your local market, connect with other growers in your area, because in my perspective, a successful flower region of Virginia, the growers are working together because not every grower is doing the same thing. If your grower next door is growing a ton of celosia and marketing it to your local florist, well, you probably need to do something different or do something different with your celosia. So I think that my advice to you, if you're starting out, is, figure out who's doing what you're doing in your area, and also get a mentor. I think every part of your life, having a mentor is great, whether it's spiritual, educationally, physically. Having a mentor is wonderful, and I think there's no difference for our farmers. So I know my mentor is at Arsenal Farm in Charlotte County, and she's coached me through so much. She's able to tell me about diseases to look out for, or different types of drip tape to use, different species that grow well in our area. So I think that's really beneficial.
Definitely. And I think you can reach out to your local extension agent and find a mentor in them as well. I know I found one in you.
Yes. I have loved working with you and seeing how you've grown and everything that you've been doing, and your confidence in Master Gardeners and all the ways that you've connected there as well, which I know we'll dive into Master Gardeners a little bit further in a future episode if some of y'all are listening and you're like, what the world is that? we could dive into it more later on.
So for listeners who are excited about growing flowers right now, where can they go to learn more?
Well, I really hope that you'll go to our Prince Edward County Extension website, and that you'll scroll down to the bottom and find our page for our cut flower discussion group. So we actually have our own website now, where we post all of our events and things going on. So I really hope to see you there. I also would recommend reaching out to your local extension agent. And if you don't even know where to start with that, you could just ask them, hey, I'd love for you to come out and do a soil sample, and see where the conversation goes. And if they don't have a lot of horticulture knowledge, I'm sure that an agent in a neighboring county probably could assist you in some way with what you're trying to do with your production. There's also associations, as I mentioned, the Society of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. They have a great variety of flower topics and Zoom meetings and publications. Virginia Tech and Virginia State both have publications as well related to growing cut flowers and gardening in general that are very useful. So I'll actually tag a couple of those publications in the comments section of this podcast. So if you're interested in learning more, you can click on those and check those out.
And finally, if listeners want to learn more about Extension or find programs in their area, where should they go?
Well, I would just do a quick Google search and look up your county extension office, and that's a great way to connect. Most county offices have um, staff that can assist you in some way to find out what programs are happening in your area. There's a lot of Facebook pages. I know that I post our programs in the local newspaper, on the radio, on our Instagram. So there's a lot of ways you can stay informed about what's going on.
You mentioned you have an Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
So our handle is VCE Prince Edward Ag, and then the little underscore line. And then, of course, we're on Facebook as well. You can look up our Prince Edward County Extension Office. Our May meeting will be in Charlotte County, and we're going to be talking about high tunnels and getting to tour a small-scale flower farm that has awesome production. So you'll be able to ask all the questions that you have, and then we're going to try to do a little make and take there as well. So we're really looking forward to that. So I hope to see you all at some of these programs. And, I'd really like to thank Leanna for joining us on our first episode of the Flower Hour. And I'm just really excited to see how this takes off and how our listeners are able to connect with Extension and what we're doing here. So thank you, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.